Before Rome ruled the world, before the cross replaced the altar, there stood a city by the sea, beautiful and cursed. Carthage, a jewel of trade, a power of the Mediterranean, and some claim the home of the most horrifying religious ritual ever recorded. Here, under torchlight and sacred chants, priests raised infants into the air and cast them into the flames. Their cries echoed through the stone valleys of the Tophet. Some say it is a lie told by their enemies. Others say it is the darkest truth of ancient faith. This is not mythology. This is ritual, fire, and fear. This is the Blood Archive, a city built on smoke and salt long before it became the enemy of Rome. Carthage was a rising star, a powerful city-state in North Africa, founded by Phoenician settlers from Tyre around 814 BCE. The Carthaginians were masters of trade, sailing across the Mediterranean with purple dyes, glass, incense, and silver. Their city boasted grand harbors, towering walls, and temples that rivaled any in the ancient world. But beneath the wealth and splendor was something else. Something older, something sacred. A flame that burned not just for light, but for blood. Their religion descended from the ancient Canaanite traditions of the Levant. And central to that faith was sacrifice, especially to Baal-Hamon, the lord of the sky and time, and Tanit, his consort, goddess of fertility and the moon. In their temples, known today as Tophets, something unimaginable took place. Bones of infants, ashes of toddlers, ceremonial urns buried beneath stone stelae inscribed with symbols of gods and burning altars. For centuries, these sites lay buried, until archaeologists unearthed thousands of charred remains. Was this the result of illness, cremation, or, as ancient Roman writers claimed, deliberate slaughter? To answer that, we must walk into the fire. Gods that demanded children, Baal-Hamon was not a gentle god. He was the lord of storms and seasons, of time and decay. He was the devourer and the giver. And he demanded payment. The worship of Baal and Tanit was marked by intense, blood-soaked ritual. The most extreme, the mulk or sacrifice of children. Greek and Roman sources, including Plutarch, Diodorus Siculus, and Tertullian, paint a horrifying picture. According to them, when crisis struck, war, famine, plague, the priests of Carthage would gather the city's nobility and demand a sacrifice. Infants, often the firstborn of elite families, were taken from their mother's arms and handed over to the high priest. The flames of the Tophet would roar. The child would be placed upon a sloped altar or metal statue, and as drums thundered and chants rose, the fire consumed them. Some accounts claim a mechanical idol with outstretched hands was heated from beneath. The child was placed on the hands and then slid alive into the furnace below. Mothers were forbidden to weep. If they did, the offering was invalid. Instead, they were expected to stand proudly, stoically, devoutly. Their child was a gift, a covenant, a message to the gods. We will give all. The archaeological evidence, for centuries, many dismissed these tales as Roman propaganda, invented to justify Carthage's destruction in the Punic Wars. But in the modern era, archaeologists uncovered the Tophet of Carthage, a sacred burial ground unlike any other. Inside, they found urns containing the charred remains of thousands of infants and young animals. The burials were marked with carved stelae bearing the symbols of Tanit and Baal-Hamon. The remains span centuries, from the 8th century BCE to the city's fall in 146 BCE. The debate exploded. Were these children victims of ritual murder, or simply cremated after dying of natural causes? Some scholars argue the burial site reflects high infant mortality rates, that animals buried alongside them were merely offerings of mourning. But others, backed by forensic evidence and the uniform cremation style, point to something far darker. Too many remains. Too many patterns, too much fire, and too many ancient witnesses all telling the same terrible story. Even the urns themselves seem ritualized, placed with reverence, stacked in layers, built into a landscape of ongoing sacrifice. Not once, not by accident, but again and again. Fire as faith. To understand how such a practice could exist, we must leave behind modern morals and enter a world where death was part of cosmic balance. The Carthaginian worldview saw sacrifice as a sacred transaction. Just as crops were offered to the earth or incense to the sky, the life of a child, especially the firstborn, was seen as the highest gift to the gods. The act of burning wasn't just about death. It was about transformation. Fire turned flesh to smoke. Smoke ascended to heaven. In this belief, the soul of the child passed directly into the realm of the divine, carrying with it the prayers and desperation of the city. This was not done lightly. Only in times of disaster, when crops failed, when enemies approached, when the gods grew silent, and sometimes to fulfill vows, a promise made before birth. If you grant me this child, I will return it to you. In a world governed by divine wrath and favor, the life of one could save the lives of many. The flames were not only feared, they were worshipped. The furnace of Moloch, the altar was silent. The drums had stilled. The torches crackled, casting long shadows on the walls of the Tophet. And then the fire was lit. Not just a flame, but a devouring inferno hotter than a forge, fed with cedar, cypress, and oil, so that it roared like a beast from the deep. This was no hearth. It was a furnace, a mouth, a tomb. At the center of the blaze stood the idol of Moloch, iron or bronze, depending on the source, towering, hollow, inhuman, with arms outstretched. Some said like a father receiving his son, others like a predator awaiting its prey. The fire inside the idol was stoked until the statue glowed red with heat. Then the ritual began. Some accounts, Greek, Roman, and Jewish, say the children were laid in the arms of the idol, and from there slid into the burning cavity. Others describe a platform or chute, a mechanical contraption, almost industrial in its cruelty, built to ensure that the children were consumed whole. Their cries, if any were heard, were drowned by drums, flutes singing, screaming, all engineered to mask the sound of suffering. Priests encircled the blaze. They sang hymns of joy. Parents danced with vacant smiles. The people chanted prayers to Baal Hammon, asking for rain, health, victory. And in that moment, Carthage was not a civilization. It was a pyre, propaganda or truth. The image is horrifying, unthinkable, almost unbelievable. So unbelievable, in fact, that some scholars have called it a lie, a smear, a tool of Roman propaganda. Carthage, after all, was Rome's greatest enemy. The Punic Wars were brutal. Hannibal nearly brought Rome to its knees. When Rome finally won, it didn't just destroy Carthage, it erased it, burned it to ash, salted the ground, or so legend says. And in the aftermath, Roman authors painted Carthaginians as monsters, child burners, idol worshippers, uncivilized fiends. Could this have been an exaggeration? A political tool? A way to justify genocide? Maybe, but archaeology complicates the story. The Tophet revealed in the 1920s, French archaeologists began digging in Carthage. What they found was chilling. An open-air sanctuary filled with urns, thousands of them. Layer upon layer of burned bones, tiny bones, infant bones, bones of newborns, toddlers, even fetuses. Each urn was buried beneath a steely stone markers carved with symbols of gods, inscriptions, or stylized human figures. Many bore the symbol of Tanit, a triangle with a circle on top, arms raised like an abstract mother of flame. The site was massive. Over 20,000 urns. Some archaeologists called it a cemetery. Others, a mass grave. A tophet, a word borrowed from the Hebrew Bible to describe a place of child sacrifice. The bones showed signs of intense burning. Ashes were mixed with charcoal. Some urns held animal remains, 2 lambs, birds, goats. Substitutes, perhaps, when human children weren't available, or when a conscience rebelled. The evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't just burial. It was ritual. But ritual for what? Substitution or slaughter? Modern historians still argue, were all these children sacrificed? Or were some stillbirths, infants who died naturally, later cremated in a sacred rite? Radiocarbon dating shows that the children were very young, most less than 2 years old. Some urns contain multiple children, suggesting mass sacrifice or ritual group offerings. But the number of urns, spread over centuries, suggests the practice was not constant. It may have peaked in times of crisis, drought, war, plague, when crops failed or invaders neared. The pressure to appease the gods grew. And in those moments, the people of Carthage may have turned to the flames. Some scholars propose that child sacrifice was a form of covenant, a desperate exchange. The most precious life for the highest favor. It wasn't madness. It was logic twisted by fear and belief. A mother's hand imagined the choice. A mother, standing before the temple, her baby in her arms, the priests chanting, the fires roaring. She believes truly that by offering her child, she might save others, her family, her city, her people. This was not murder. Not to her. It was salvation. To refuse might doom the harvest, curse the household, invite divine wrath. Some stele even bear inscriptions of gratitude. To Tenet and Baal-Hamon, I have given what was promised, not a lament, a vow fulfilled. In Carthaginian religion, children weren't just killed. They were elevated, made sacred. And for many, that belief outweighed the agony. The ritual of fire and ash, each sacrifice followed a pattern. First, preparation. The child bathed, clothed, perfumed, sometimes anointed with oil. A final embrace. A prayer whispered by trembling lips. Then the procession. Priests in ceremonial robes led the family to the tophet. Musicians played. Dancers swayed. The air thick with incense and dread. At the altar, the child was offered to the flames, either laid in the arms of the idol or placed on the burning platform. Screams lost to the sound of drums. Afterwards, the ashes were collected, bones sifted, the remains placed in a clay urn. The urn was sealed, marked with the family's name or the deity's symbol, buried in sacred earth, watched over by gods and ancestors. And the people went home. The sacrifice complete, the covenant made. Rome returns. When the Romans finally crushed Carthage in 146 BCE, they found the tophet still active, the priests still chanted, the fires still burned, the children still died. The Romans, ironically, were both appalled and fascinated. Some wrote with horror, others with perverse admiration. For all Rome's cruelty, it had no ritual like this. And so, Rome destroyed Carthage. It tore down the temples, killed the priests, scattered the ashes of the children. Then, in time, it told the story its own way, casting Carthaginians as evil, their gods as demons, their rites as proof of savagery. But even Rome couldn't erase the memory. The bones remained. Echoes in Scripture. The Hebrew Bible speaks of child sacrifice in the valley of Hinnom Gehenna, the prototype of hell. There, too, children were burned in fire to Moloch. Prophets like Jeremiah and Ezekiel condemned the practice, calling it an abomination. They built the high places of Baal to burn their sons in the fire, something I did not command or mention, nor did it enter my mind. Jeremiah 19:5. Carthage, it seemed, was not alone. From Canaan to Carthage, from Jerusalem to the western Mediterranean, The god of fire had many altars, and always it was the innocent who paid. Was it faith or fear? Why did they do it? Why did an entire civilization burn its young? Some say it was faith. Others say fear. Most likely, it was both. The Carthaginians saw the world as dangerous, capricious, full of storms, droughts, plagues, and wars. To survive, they needed favor. To gain favor, they needed sacrifice. And the greatest sacrifice was a child. There is something chilling in that logic, that the purest thing is also the most expendable. That love itself could be currency. That devotion required ash. Legacy of the fire god. Today, the Tophet of Carthage is a quiet place. Tourists walk among the stelae. The Mediterranean breeze carries no scent of smoke, but beneath their feet lie thousands of urns. And within each urn, bones once wrapped in fire. The legacy of Moloch is not gone. It echoes in literature, in religion, in the word itself. Moloch now means any system that devours children for its own ends. We invoke it when we speak of war, of industry, of ideologies that demand innocence in exchange for progress. Moloch lives not in bronze, but in metaphor, and that may be more terrifying. The final offering. There is no record a last child sacrificed in Carthage. No inscription, no name. Only the smoke curling into the heavens. Only the silence after the drums. But that child, whoever they were, marked the end of a long, terrible tradition, one that spanned centuries, that consumed thousands, that turned faith into fire. That child was the last to be offered to a god who was never satisfied. And with them, Carthage's soul was buried. We remember Carthage for its war elephants, for Hannibal, for its fall. But behind its military glory was something darker. A furnace, a ritual, a god of flame. The children of fire were real, and history remembers them not as numbers, but as echoes. This was the Blood Archive. Subscribe to uncover more forbidden histories. The truth is older and bloodier than you've ever imagined.